It was supposed to be the perfect birthday gift for my dad. 50 years old. I wanted to show him how much he meant to me, how much he had done for me growing up. I thought $20,000 would be a meaningful gesture. Not just money, but something that could change his life. My dad worked his whole life, always putting others before himself, and never really had the chance to enjoy the fruits of his labor. I remember the excitement when I took the envelope to the party. Everyone was there, my siblings, his old friends from work, family we hadn't seen in years. The house was buzzing, music playing softly in the background, and the smell of cake filling the air. My dad sat in the middle of it all, grinning like a kid, surrounded by laughter and congratulations. When it was my turn to give him the gift, I watched his face light up with anticipation. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, handing him the envelope. He looked at it for a moment, the way someone would look at a surprise gift they hadn't expected. But then, something shifted. The smile on his face faltered just a little. "What's this?" he asked, voice still warm but laced with confusion. "It's $20,000. I wanted to help you with whatever you need, or just do something special. You deserve it." There was a long pause. The noise of the party seemed to fade away for a moment, as if the world was holding its breath. My dad slowly opened the envelope, took out the stack of bills, and stared at it for a moment. Then he did something I never thought he would do. He ripped the money in half, tearing it with his hands like it was just a piece of paper. "What the hell, Dad?" I managed to choke out, shocked, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. He looked up at me, his eyes cold now, the warmth gone. "This isn't yours to give. You don't get to decide what I need. I don't want your money, I don't want your pity." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My whole body went numb. People around us were starting to notice, some exchanging confused glances, others too stunned to speak. My chest tightened, my hands shaking. "I don't understand," I whispered, not sure what else to say. Was I missing something? Was I wrong to want to do something nice for him? My dad stood up, the torn bills still clenched in his fist. "You don't get it. I didn't raise you to think that throwing money at problems solves them. You're not going to fix anything by giving me cash. I've lived my life, and I don't need you to try and make up for it now. This isn't about money. It's about respect." His voice had dropped to something sharp, like a knife cutting through the silence. I felt smaller by the second. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. "I thought you'd be happy." "It's $20,000, Dad," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. He walked away from me without another word, moving to the other side of the room where he could disappear into the crowd. I stood there, frozen. The noise around me resumed, but it was like I was on the outside of it, hearing muffled voices and laughter that felt distant and hollow. My mind couldn't wrap around what had just happened. The rest of the evening was a blur. I kept trying to understand why he had reacted the way he did, but I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the more my heart hurt. Had I done something wrong? Had I misread him all these years? It's been days now, and I still don't have the answers. I thought I understood my dad. But now I'm not so sure. The torn money sits in the trash, a stark reminder that no matter how much I wanted to give, he didn't want to take. And I'll never forget the look on his face when he said those words, "This isn't yours to give." I don't think I'll ever look at him the same way again. The days after that birthday were a blur. I kept replaying the moment over and over in my mind, each time wondering if I had done something wrong. The sting of his rejection didn't go away. It only deepened as the silence between us grew. I tried calling him, sending texts, even stopping by the house, but each time I was met with a wall. I'll never forget the first time I walked into his house after the party. The air felt different. Heavy. Cold. His living room, which used to feel warm and inviting, now felt like a place where I didn't belong. My eyes wandered to the spot where the party had happened, where I'd given him the envelope. The torn bills were still there, abandoned on the floor. It was like a punch to the gut every time I looked at them. "Dad," I said quietly, standing in the doorway, hoping he would finally open up, hoping for some explanation. "Can we talk?" He didn't respond right away. I could hear him moving around in the kitchen, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He came into the living room, his eyes avoiding mine. I could tell he was trying to act like everything was normal, but it wasn't. Not anymore. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice flat. "I don't know what happened at the party," I said, my words coming out more fragile than I intended. "I just wanted to do something for you, something that shows how much I appreciate everything you've done for me." "And you ripped it up. I don't understand why you're acting like this." He didn't say anything for a long time. I watched his face, his brow furrowing, like he was working up to something I wasn't ready to hear. Then, finally, he spoke. "You think money fixes everything," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "You think if you throw money at a problem, it goes away. But it doesn't. You don't know anything about me anymore. And that hurts. It hurts more than if you'd just kept your distance." I froze. His words cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. I thought I was doing the right thing, but it seemed like I'd completely misread him. It was like I didn't even know who my father was anymore. "Dad, I don't stop," he cut me off, raising a hand. "You don't understand. You never did." I stepped back, trying to process what he was saying. My dad was always a quiet man, someone who preferred to keep his feelings buried, but I had never seen him like this, so angry, so distant. It was like a stranger was standing in front of me, wearing his face. "I thought you were proud of me," I whispered, the words barely making it out through the lump in my throat. "You were always proud of me. I thought you'd be happy to see me do something good for you." He shook his head slowly, his eyes dark. "Proud? I don't need you to be proud of me. I need you to understand that you're not going to fix me with money. That's not how this works." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. He wasn't just rejecting the money, he was rejecting me. Rejection that felt like it was aimed straight at the core of who I was, at the way I tried to show love. "Then what do you want from me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What am I supposed to do? I don't know what you need, but I want to help you." He looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. "You want to help? Then stop thinking you can buy my love. You've been doing it your whole life, trying to fix things with gifts or money. You can't do that anymore. I'm not some project for you to fix. I'm your father, not a problem to solve." That was the moment I realized. It wasn't just about the money. It was about me, trying to fix a life that was already lived. I thought I could make it better, but the truth was, I was just making it worse. And in that silence that stretched between us, I knew something important had shifted. My dad wasn't just rejecting the gift, he was rejecting the way I saw him, the way I saw myself. And I didn't know how to fix that. The days following that conversation felt like I was walking through a fog. My dad and I barely spoke. When I visited, he'd keep his distance, and when I called, he'd pick up but say nothing. The house, which once felt like home, now felt like a battlefield, and the worst part was, I wasn't even sure who the enemy was. I spent nights lying awake, thinking about everything. The way he'd ripped up the money, the words he'd thrown at me. "You're not going to fix me with money," he'd said, but I didn't know how to fix it any other way. What was I supposed to do now? I wasn't sure if there even was a way to make things right. One evening, I decided I needed to talk to him again. Maybe this time I could get through to him, or at least understand where he was coming from. I showed up at his house unannounced, my heart pounding as I knocked on the door. When he opened it, I saw that familiar look in his eyes, that guarded expression that told me he was waiting for me to say something. I'm not here to argue, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I just want to understand. Please. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. It was as if he was weighing the decision in his mind. Finally, he stepped aside, letting me in. The silence between us was unbearable, but I knew I had to push through it. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd shared countless meals growing up. But now, the room felt colder. I could feel the distance, the years of unspoken tension pressing down on us like a thick blanket. You said I don't understand, I began, trying to keep my voice calm. But I need to know. What do you want from me, Dad? How am I supposed to show you that I care, that I want to help? I don't know how else to do it. He looked at me, his expression hard to read. You think money is the answer to everything. You always have. I didn't want you to fix me, and I didn't want you to feel sorry for me. You think I'm broken, don't you? The words stung, but I didn't let them show. No, I don't think you're broken. I just wanted to do something nice for you. I thought if I could give you something big, something that would change things, you'd see how much I appreciate you. But you're right. I don't understand. I don't get why you're so angry with me. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the table, his fingers drumming lightly on the wood. You think money solves everything. But what you don't realize is that you've never asked me what I need. You just assume. I didn't want your money. I wanted you to see me not as someone to fix, not as someone you need to help, but as your father. I'm not a charity case, and I'm not someone you can save. I felt the weight of his words sinking in, and for the first time, I began to understand. All my life, I had seen my dad as this strong, silent figure who never asked for anything, who always took care of others. But in doing that, I had forgotten that he was human too. He didn't want me to fix him. He just wanted me to see him for who he was, to accept him, flaws and all. All I wanted, he continued, his voice quieter now, was for you to understand that sometimes people don't need to be saved. They need to be heard. They need to know that you love them without trying to change them. I sat there, absorbing what he was saying. It was like a light bulb had gone off in my head. For so long, I had tried to show my love through actions, through money, gifts, grand gestures. But what he needed was something simpler, something more honest. He needed to feel seen, truly seen, without the expectation of anything in return. I'm sorry, Dad, I said quietly. I was wrong. I thought I could fix everything with a gesture, but I never stopped to ask you what you actually needed. I just wanted to show you that I cared in a way I understood. He nodded, his expression softening just a little. It's not too late, he said, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't going to be easy. There were still wounds to heal, and a lot of things left unsaid. But in that moment, I realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or fixing problems. It was about understanding, listening, and accepting each other for who we truly were. We sat there in silence for a while, the weight between us slowly starting to lift. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other again. The weeks that followed felt like a delicate balancing act. There was no magic moment where everything just clicked back into place. It was slow, painstaking work, the kind of work that involved patience and humility, something I hadn't always been good at. But something had shifted between my dad and me. We weren't fixed, but we were trying. I stopped bringing up grand gestures, stopped thinking that a check or a material thing could patch the space between us. Instead, I started to show up more, not as someone trying to prove something, but just to be present. I'd show up for dinner, help him with small things around the house, or just sit in the living room and watch whatever sports game was on, no words needed. It wasn't much, but it was something, and I could tell that my dad was appreciating it in his own quiet way. One evening, about a month after that conversation, I stopped by to help him with some yard work. It was a Saturday, and the weather was warm enough that we could spend the afternoon outside. He'd always been meticulous about his garden, and I always dreaded being roped into helping with it. But this time, I felt differently. I wasn't doing it out of obligation or trying to earn his approval. I was doing it because I wanted to spend time with him, to show him that I cared. He was already out in the yard when I arrived, his sleeves rolled up as he worked in the flower beds. I grabbed the rake and joined him, not saying much at first. It felt normal again, like how we used to be before everything got so complicated. "I didn't think you'd ever ask to help with this," he said after a while, a hint of amusement in his voice. I chuckled, brushing a few leaves off the rake. "Yeah, well, I'm getting older, I guess. Might as well learn how to do it right now." He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't just come from a joke. It felt more like something had thawed between us. I could see it in his eyes, not the distant, guarded look that had been there for so long, but something softer, more open. As we worked, I realized how much I had missed this. It wasn't the physical labor or the task at hand. It was the quiet connection, the simple act of being together without expectations. There was something deeply comforting in it. After we finished, we sat on the porch, the sun beginning to set behind the trees. My dad handed me a cold beer, and for the first time in weeks, we just relaxed. There were no heavy conversations, no unresolved tension hanging in the air. It was just us, sitting in the stillness, taking in the evening. "Dad," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I know I can't undo everything I've done, but I'm trying to do better. I want you to know that. I don't want to fix you. I just want to be here. For you." He didn't answer right away, his gaze lingering on the horizon. I couldn't read his expression, but I didn't need to. He had always been a man of few words, and his silence was often more telling than anything he could say. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes softening. "I know, kid. I know. And that's enough." I didn't say anything else. There was nothing more to say. I didn't need him to say more either. In that moment, I understood that the healing between us wouldn't happen all at once, but it would happen in small, everyday moments, in the quiet, in the shared spaces that didn't require fixing or apologies, just mutual understanding. We finished our beers in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. And in that peace, I realized that even though things weren't perfect, they were real. We were real. Things didn't change overnight. There were still misunderstandings and bumps along the way, but with each passing day, my dad and I found new ways to communicate, new ways to be present for each other. The $20,000 I had tried to give him didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about that. It was about showing up. And in the end, I think that's all we both really needed. There was no grand resolution. No dramatic shift. But in the quiet moments, in the things unsaid, I felt like we were finally beginning to understand each other again. And that, in itself, was enough. It's been a few months since that afternoon, and things have continued to shift, but it's never been the same as it was before. I don't know if it ever will be. But in a way, I've come to realize that's not a bad thing. There's a new understanding between my dad and me, something that feels both fragile and strong at the same time. It's as though we've learned to navigate the distance, and in doing so, we've built a quieter, more honest bond. One night, I decided to visit him on a whim, not for anything important, just to see how he was doing. I wasn't expecting much, just the usual low-key evening, maybe watch a game, have a beer, and talk about life in passing. When I knocked on the door, my dad answered, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, kid. You need something, or are you just here to hang out?" he asked, the warmth back in his voice. "Just here to hang out," I replied, offering a small smile. "How's it going?" He stepped aside to let me in, and we sat at the kitchen table like we used to, our usual comfortable routine. But this time, something felt different. It wasn't forced. We weren't trying to heal anything or make up for lost time. It just was, like we had both accepted that the past was behind us and the present was all we had. Got any plans for the weekend? I asked, leaning back in my chair. He shrugged, looking thoughtful for a moment. Not really. Same old, same old. Might get some yard work done. How about you? I wasn't sure how to phrase it, but the thought had been in my mind for a while. You ever think about doing something different? Like, something for yourself? You've worked so hard for everyone else for so long. Maybe it's time you did something just for you. His brow furrowed slightly, but not in the way I expected. He seemed intrigued. Like what? I wasn't sure, but the words came out before I could second-guess myself. Maybe take a trip. You know, somewhere you've always wanted to go. Get out of here for a while. He sat back in his chair, studying me like he was thinking about it, like he was weighing the possibility. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, that reluctance to do something just for himself, the same way he had always resisted letting anyone take care of him. But this time, there was a shift in his expression, a hint of something that felt like curiosity, or maybe even hope. I don't know, he said slowly, I've never really thought about it. Never really had the time, either. You have the time now, I said, my voice softer, a little more coaxing. You've worked your whole life, Dad. It's not too late to take a break. Maybe go somewhere quiet, somewhere with no expectations. He didn't answer right away. We sat there in silence, the sound of the clock ticking in the background, both of us caught in our own thoughts. I didn't know if he would ever take me up on it, but in that moment, I felt like I had finally given him something that wasn't about fixing him, wasn't about money or trying to prove anything. It was just an idea, a suggestion, one that gave him permission to think about his own needs for the first time in a long while. As the evening wore on, we talked about small things, the usual banter, stories from his workdays, casual remarks about the weather. It felt like the weight of the past was slowly but surely lifting, little by little, until it was no longer at the forefront of our conversations. We weren't trying to relive old moments or make up for mistakes. We were just being. And that was enough. Before I left, I looked at my dad one last time, his tired eyes meeting mine. I'm proud of you, you know, I said, the words feeling more genuine than they ever had before. And I'm glad we're finally figuring this out. He gave me a long look, like he was searching for something in my face. Then, finally, a small, sincere smile tugged at the corner of his lips. I'm proud of you, too, kid. It was the simplest thing, the smallest exchange, but for the first time, I truly believed him. There were no more walls between us, no more expectations or miscommunications. We had found our way back to each other, not through grand gestures or apologies, but through something far more powerful, understanding, respect, and time. I don't know if my dad will ever take that trip, or if anything will ever be perfect between us. But I do know this, sometimes, the quietest moments are the ones that heal the most. And in those moments, I've realized that I don't need to fix anything. I just need to show up. And I think that's enough. The months that followed continued to unfold with a new kind of ease, a steadiness that I hadn't known was possible between my dad and me. We didn't need to fix anything, and I didn't need to prove my love for him with grand gestures or expensive gifts. The healing had been slow, like the growing of roots beneath the surface of the earth, unseen but steady. One evening, about 6 months after that conversation, I found myself at his house again. It was just another one of those quiet visits, with no agenda, no heavy conversation weighing on us. We were sitting in the living room, watching a game together, something we had done so many times before but had never felt so simple or comforting. I looked over at him, his face illuminated by the flickering light of the TV. For the first time in a long while, I noticed the lines on his face, the gray in his hair, the tiredness in his eyes that spoke of years of hard work and sacrifice. But there was something else too. A softness, a contentment that hadn't been there before, a kind of peace that we had both fought for without realizing it. You still thinking about that trip? I asked casually, though my heart was beating faster than I cared to admit. He glanced at me, then back at the screen. There was a long pause, and I started to wonder if I'd pushed too hard. But then, just when I thought the moment had passed, he said, maybe. Haven't decided where yet. I couldn't hide the smile that tugged at my lips. You should. You deserve it. He nodded, his gaze soft. I think you're right. In that moment, everything felt like it had finally come full circle. It wasn't about the money or the gifts or even the words we had exchanged. It was about us being there for each other, just as we were, no expectations, no fixing, just two people who had learned to understand one another. And I realized something important that night: sometimes, it's not the big things that matter. It's the small, quiet moments that slowly piece things back together. We weren't perfect. There was still a lot unsaid between us, but we had both come to terms with what we needed. My dad didn't need my money or my pity. He needed my presence, my respect, and my understanding. And for the first time in years, I knew that was enough. As I left his house that evening, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. I didn't know where this new chapter would lead us, but I was okay with that. For the first time in a while, I knew we were exactly where we were supposed to be. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest gift of all. I didn't need to fix anything. I just needed to show up. And that was all he ever really needed from me.